Democracy is an experiment. The nature of this experiment depends on the country's socio-economic political history. That's the view of Professor Sipho Seepe, who argues that regular elections have become the defining feature of the democratic process. Prof Seepe now joins us. Prof, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Has the proliferation of electoral politics, party politics in an electoral system left us in a democratic paralysis?
Well, not necessarily. I think one of the things that we must accept and probably credit the ANC is for sustaining the environment where people can express themselves through the electoral process. And the mushrooming of the parties also indicates that people still believe that this electoral process can serve as an instrument or tool to change their lives. At the same time, it also reflects the failure of the ANC to have sustained its dominance. But the ANC used to call itself a leader of society. And if you look at the mushrooming, most of the mushrooming of parties are largely in the black areas, effectively meaning that the ANC has lost that right to claim to be a leader of society and claim that it is a custodian of the people's aspiration. But where the trick comes is that once you have many parties and you have a crowded space, they spread themselves thinly, and therefore they end up diluting their own effectiveness. But what needs to also to point out that it is largely the parties that claim to be more in the left that have been disintegrating. If you're to look at the two parties, Freedom Front Plus and the DA, they have somehow succeeded to sustain and satisfy their own constituencies. But when it comes to black parties, you have a lot of parties contesting against each other. And what is often embarrassing is that the same parties tend to be supported by almost the same funders, almost as if these funders play the role of divide and rule, while there is a consolidation of a wide vote. And this is what I find to be unfortunate, because some of these parties, they do not differ much when you talk.
Can I pause you there? Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
I want us to look at the Democratic Alliance as an example of a party you describe as a party that's consolidated its base. The Democratic Alliance has been losing voters in real terms, right? Perhaps not as a nominal percentage of electoral share, but certainly the amount of the gross number of votes they've received has seen a reduction. Not only that, they've also seen a splintering within the DA in a similar way you've seen it in the ANC. From the DA, you have at least 3 other political parties that have broken away, Action SA being one of them, and Bold One South Africa with Musa Mamane being another example of that, and various other starts and fails here and there. So it seems like the fragmentation happens across the spectrum, not just on the center left to far left.
Yeah, well, let me take you back to 2019. There were about 48 parties that were contesting. And you had the Democratic Alliance and you had the Freedom Front Plus. And the 46 remaining parties were largely black. And if you're to look at the origin of those parties, you find that these are the parties that have moved out of largely the black liberation movements. And yes, the Democratic Alliance has not been immune to some people moving out of it, like Action SA. But if you consider the EFF, you talk about UDM, you talk about COPE, you talk about MK, all these parties seem to come from the ANC. So there has been more in terms of the loss from the ANC. And if you go back to 1994, the party like the DA and DP at the time, it grew to where it went beyond the threshold of about 10% of the share of the vote. So that is more of an increment. But the ANC has actually gone down. When you talk about going down to almost 40% from 57, from 62, that's a major loss.
Yeah. Is the fragmentation and splintering of parties from hegemonic political structures a natural consequence of a growing and maturing democracy?
Well, not necessarily. It is more an expression of the failure of the strong parties to sustain the identity and to satisfy their own constituency. Yes, from the perspective of the structure, you could actually say the fact that we have so many parties, it does indicate that people believe there's an element of vibrancy. But at the same time, we must also ask how effective are they in terms of changing the material conditions of the people that they claim to represent.
Yeah. Lastly and importantly here is that as more and more parties come about, the vote splinters even further, and that means that we might find ourselves with parties who don't stick around long enough, some new ones coming about, and parties who will sustain themselves through 1 or 2 seat allocations in wherever they're contesting, whether it be national parliament or provincial legislatures or local government, whatever the case may be. Is that a healthy representation or a healthy manifestation of representative democracies?
My sense is that in time, people will understand that consolidation is the answer. At the moment, we need to also be tolerant and patient with ourselves, that there'll come a time when parties will begin to say it is better for us to work together. Already parties like Action SA, BOSA, and Rise Mzansi, there's a discussion that says maybe we should work together because ideologically we do not differ. And there are some people who are on the left, who also claim to be on the left, who are saying parties like EFF, MK, the new party or movement that's coming called Maipuye, have much more in common, and they need to find a way in which they can work together, including also possibly working with the ANC, because the argument is, if these parties do not differ ideologically, then the difference seems to be now located within the individuals that are leading those parties. So the issue here, the electorate will say, are we here dealing with vehicles, or are we dealing with egos of individuals? And if we're dealing with egos of individuals, the society and voters can actually suggest that you guys need to work together, and only when you work together will we give your support.
Yeah, Prof Seepe, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. That is Professor Sipho Seepe reacting to an announcement by the IEC that there are more political parties than ever before, and of course what the implication of that is on our growing democracy.